Hey, what's up, guys? I'm Isaac Smith.
And I'm Josiah Foor.
Welcome to the fourth episode of this podcast. And that reminds me, what kind of name would fit this podcast? I've been trying to brainstorm some names, but have come up short. So if you have any ideas for the name of this podcast, put them down in the comments below. So as most of you know, the world's been quarantined to keep people inside their homes, working from home, or doing an e-learning based education. Josiah is one of my best friends, and he will be co-hosting this podcast today. We will be talking back and forth over a Zoom call, so this will be a bit off the cuff, but I hope it will still be high quality and entertaining.
Yeah, Isaac, today we'll look into the possible future of the coronavirus and talk about the future of flying cars and airborne taxis. We'll take a short break and wrap it up with some small talk and behind the scenes information. Let's get into it.
All right. So personally, I've been affected by this. Obviously, my school's been closed like a lot across the country, and we've been doing this e-learning stuff. And we just had some funny moments because everyone's so bored. So everyone's like, like a teacher will host a Zoom call. And normally, like, if you want to get out of school, like everyone just wants to get out of school. So if it's optional, no one's going to go. But it's actually been kind of funny because everyone's gone to these Zoom calls. Are you doing anything like that, Josiah?
Yep, that's exactly what's been happening to me. We have had some pretty fun Zoom calls with my homeroom, and we're thinking about taking a little field trip to a holiday park and hanging out there. Social distancing, of course.
Yeah, of course. So we're planning on doing something similar over a giant Zoom call, which I think is gonna be completely chaotic because we're gonna get our entire team, which is like 150 plus kids, in a single Zoom call, right?
Yeah,
and then the only point of it is to socialize. So imagine how many people are gonna be talking over each other. And then some kids are just going to get riled up, and some like crazy kid is just going to start screaming into the mic, and it's just going to be so chaotic.
Yeah. One of my people in my class, he tricked one of our teachers into disconnecting the Zoom call by telling him how to turn the volume up, but the control he actually gave him was to disconnect. And it was really funny.
That's funny. So, I've actually had a really funny story. So, we were ordering takeout from Panda Express because you're still allowed to do that here. It's all like you can't go in and all this stuff, and they have a system now. But we went to Panda Express to get some Chinese food, and there was this crazy people next to us who were like completely terrified. And so they're trying. So what the Panda Express is doing is they go in and they come out the door and they say, "Hey, what's your order number?" and like, "What is your name?" and stuff. Then they go in, bring out the food, set it on a table, and after they've closed the door, then you go up, walk up and take it, and then you go to your car and drive away. Well, that's how it's supposed to be, at least. So what happened for us is there was this one crazy lady who hadn't gotten her food right, and so she was waiting there for a little while, but she was completely freaking out and talking about how she wasn't changing gloves and that she was touching the door handle and she should change gloves every time she touches the door handle, which makes absolutely no sense because theoretically, she's the only one touching that door handle. So, like, what she touches, she's not touching at the same time. And she's wearing gloves. And she's touching the outside of a food package. So it's like all of the things are going crazy. But this woman's like literally yelling, saying, "I work with children. I know how to wash hands." So it was really crazy.
I went to Grader's Ice Cream in Broad Ripple a couple days ago. We biked there. And they had all the X's on the ground, right? And I walked in and totally forgot that we were in a plague. And I walked right up to the counter, and everybody just looked at me really weird. And then I was like, "Oh, I saw the X's on the ground," so I backed up. That was really awkward.
Yeah, so I'm sure you've heard this 1,000 times, but we'll just reinforce the CDC's instructions. So I'm not a medical expert, neither is Josiah, but we'll just give you what the CDC is saying again. Those are the professionals. So try to stay 6 feet away from others. Don't wear a mask, but obey what the CDC says. So there's many ways you can make masks, but you should wear a mask if you're feeling symptomatic. So if you're getting symptoms, that's when you should wear a mask, because the mask stops you from coughing and having airborne things go and land on surfaces, which then people will touch or they'll breathe in themselves. So that's what the mask is for. So just make sure to obey those instructions. Just social distance, just
Yeah, if you think that this won't affect you, today the athletic director at my high school died of coronavirus. So I didn't really personally know him, but it is very real.
yeah, it's crazy. So we'll move on from that. I'm sure you've already heard enough of coronavirus, COVID-19 stuff. So we'll move on that. We'll take a short break and then we'll go into our next segment of flying cars and airborne taxis. So see you in a minute. All right, so welcome back. We're now going to talk about flying cars and airborne taxis. So why don't you just talk about that, Josiah?
Okay, flying cars, right? They're in the movies. Everybody wants a flying car. But as history shows us, flying cars do not exist. They Flying cars that do exist are very costly and not legal most of the time. So there's a lot of problems with that, and Isaac can tell you about that.
Yeah, so we see in movies, Back to the Future, was it 2? Was like a really famous part of it as they have the DeLorean lifts up and he's like, we don't have enough road, and he's like, where we're going, we don't need roads, and everyone just was like
Uh-huh.
freaking out, and it was so cool. But there is actually really potential for that. And that's the crazy thing, because the amount of space you can travel, one, you're going much, much faster when you're flying a plane. And two, you don't have to worry about traffic. You don't have to worry about like taking the right road. So like it's literally a straight line and you can just get there in a short amount of time.
Yeah,
So
the first
and
working flying car was actually invented in 1958. So there
yeah,
was true potential to it until they realized all the issues that they would have.
yeah. So like in a city, it's a little more difficult because of all the airports, heliports. You can't really have a place to land it. But in rural areas, a flying car seems to have a lot more potential because some people, their neighbors live more than a mile away. So if you want to get to your grandma's and they live across the state, just fly it over instead of taking several hours to get there. But
And
of
even in the
course,
cities, you wouldn't have to deal with traffic or rush hour or anything like that.
yeah. So let's talk about the challenges of flying cars specifically and what they face. So we first know they're expensive. Okay, everyone knows that when you're on the brink of technology, everyone's going to cost, not necessarily because it's expensive to make, but also because it's the first of its kind and because the demand is high but the supply is low. So what's our next point, Josiah?
The performance of them is not always reliable and can have safety issues. Um, Also, there's a lot of noise coming from flying cars. Planes take a lot of energy to fly, and if you've ever been on a plane, planes are very loud, and flying cars are no different from planes. So, yes, they will be loud.
Yep. Especially back to that performance point. It's really saying, engineers had this point where they're like, we can only build an inferior car that will also be an inferior plane. And it's much better if you just keep them separate and that you just go in a plane or you go in a car. And if you put them together, bad things will happen.
Yeah, there's also the subject of getting permits and legal issues. And is it really safe to have civilians flying around in planes across the sky? And I do not think that is a safe idea because people are already dumb enough in cars as they are.
Yeah, you can't pull over if something goes wrong in a flying car. You're either gonna figure out a way to fix it or you're falling from the sky. So there's no way to like pull over if someone tries to fly without like main component. Like people try to drive down the road sometimes at night without headlights. A a similar situation in like a plane, let's say they try flying but their GPS is broken. Those could have much dire consequences than a like a car would.
And some supporters of flying cars will say that statistically it's way more safe for to fly in a plane than it is to drive a car. But that is with trained pilots who know exactly what they're doing. And with civilian use, could become a real safety problem.
Yeah. And then there's always the question of, okay, the exact design of it. If we're talking of more a plane, they're going to have a runway. They have to have foldable wings if you want it to be all in one piece. They have to be rigid enough to survive the bumps of the road, but also light enough to be able to fly through the sky. So it's a delicate balance. Now, I bet a bunch of you are wondering about, hey, what about like quadcopters? We see drones all the time. I have a drone. I'm a big fan of drones. What if we just basically made like a helicopter? And that has a lot more potential because you can take off more of like a driveway, but then you still have those same points of cost, performance, noise. Noise is even greater with helicopters. Performance is worse in helicopters, and cost is about the same because flying car is a flying car. So
Yeah. However, a air taxi would not really double as a car. It would just be an air taxi. So that's why there's a lot more potential in that because you would still be keeping them separate, but it would still help with urban air travel a lot.
yeah. So flying taxi, if you haven't heard of this concept, it's basically like having an Uber, but they'll go through the sky, which means it's not a car, it doesn't drive. It simply lifts off the ground like a helicopter or even a Voldo plane, which is vertical takeoff and landing. And it flies to another building across the city without going through traffic and lands there and unloads. So it's basically like an array of, let's just say, helicopter in today's terms. And a helicopter will jump from place to place to place and eventually end up back at like their central station. Let's say Uber makes it. That's where it'll end up at the end of the day.
However, I do not really actually like the term taxis because the term taxis implies that it can pick you up from anywhere. And a plane like this would be more like a bus because you'd actually have to go to a station or a helipad to get picked up. You can't just
Yeah.
like call an Uber taxi. Can't do that.
Nope, can't do that. So I still feel like flying buses, flying taxis, whatever you want to call them, still have more potential than flying cars though, because these things can be manufactured at a large scale. Companies would be buying them, so cost wouldn't really be an issue. Performance, they can be more optimized because they don't have to be like a car. So that's a good bonus. The noise, it's still there. And actually, with helicopters, it's going to be louder. But already in cities, you got cars honking. You got some other stuff. You got um, noises from people on the street. You got noises from other places. So there are a lot of noises going around everywhere. So this is still a problem, but I feel like with some more innovation and more industry looking into this could actually come out. In fact, Uber plans to unveil some of their flying taxis in
Los Angeles
some
now.
Los Angeles. Yeah, they plan to unleash them in Los Angeles. I think it's this year or next year.
2022.
All right, so it's close. It's close. We're almost there, guys. All right, so we'll wrap this up a little bit. So, what do you think about this flying taxi idea, Josiah?
Um, I see potential in it, but I don't see it in the near future like Uber does because it's not going to be like an Uber ride. It's going to be you have to drive to the helipad, which there might only be like 5 in the whole city, and you have to drive to there, and then you have to. It's going to be a lot of money to pay for an air ride. It's like paying for a helicopter ride. So it's kind of
Yeah.
more of a subway. It's not really a taxi.
Yep. There's also the thing of autonomous and like you don't need a pilot, which is another good thing with taxis. Their flight plans are prearranged, so they'll be 100% autonomous, which is good. So let's wrap this up and let's go into another segment. So I was just gonna see what's happening. What's happened, Josiah? You want to share a story with us?
Yeah, so unlike Isaac who lives in Carmel, I live here in Indianapolis, and we've just been hanging out with some of our neighbors who live around here. Went fishing, caught a dead fish, uh, played basketball. Yep, pretty much it.
How do you catch a dead fish?
You hook your line on it on purpose. It was half eaten. It was pretty disgusting, actually. But
That's a little gross. So now it's the thing. I'm more of a science technology channel. So it's just kind of like what's happening in the tech world or not happening due to this virus. So let's just go through some updates. So first of all, iPad Pro was released. That's pretty big. Have you heard about that, Josiah?
no.
No.
I
So
don't keep up with
basically,
the tech world.
So what's happening is so iPad Pro is obviously the next generation of iPad, but every iteration it becomes more and more of a computer, and every year there's a challenge saying, "Hey, could this be your next laptop?" Because the thing is, laptops are getting closer to computers, and computers are getting closer to iPads. So the bridge is like we're getting laptops with touch screens and fold back keyboards, and we're getting iPads with keyboards, and we're getting them with what is it, Apple Pencil, and we're getting them with stands to hold them. So it's like the line is becoming so blurry now. It's kind of funny.
Yeah,
So
I actually don't like that. If you buy an iPad, it's because you want a tablet, not a computer. If you want a computer, you should buy a computer. Uh,
yeah,
That's
it's
just from my standpoint. What I do know is the PS5 has come out.
oh yeah, that
Um,
controller
that
though.
looks
Have you seen it?
pretty smexy.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's all weird.
yeah, that
It's
is
like
weird.
they put the Xbox controller
I
and
know.
they took the PS4 controller and they were trying to like make the best of both worlds. Though
Yeah,
they're like totally not admitting it. They're like it's for the extra haptics and
yeah.
stuff. And I'm like,
The Xbox Pro or something like that. I forget what it's called, but it came out too. It's like the next gen of Xbox too. If
I don't
you
know
think
about
about
you,
it,
but I don't like it when companies name their things like Pro and Light. I'm like, literally just give us numbers, please. Like, what was it? Sony headphones. My dad just got, well, didn't just get it, but got these new headphones called the WXM. What was it? WXM 3 1000s. I don't know what it is. It's crazy. No, it's Sony 1000 XM3. That's what it was.
ooh,
It's insane. It's like, why would you name something like that? I can't even recite it. It's like, just stick with the numbers, please.
yeah. Well, if you think about it, the PS4 has been out since 2012.
Yeah,
That's a long time for a gaming console.
yeah. It's pretty long time. It's
Yep.
like what I find funny is like I have a PS4 and it's like I have never found anything like bad about it. Obviously graphics keep getting better, but it's not like it's bad. So I'm like if it was made in 2012, how much better is this technology coming out in 2020? Like
Yeah.
it's like I better be impressed. If it's literally just like they put the PS4 and the PS5 and just like remarketed it pretty much, I'm gonna be so disappointed.
Yeah.
It's like you've had years to develop this. I'm waiting to see. I haven't looked up like any reviews or anything. There's only the biggest people I've gotten like hands-on experience on it and
Yeah.
stuff.
It's like exclusive right now.
Yeah, but I'll be interested. So now we're gonna go into more of a behind the scenes kind of look. So I've been making my first video, but it's been a royal pain because iMovie flipped out on me. If you don't know, I edit with iMovie, and when I try to make videos on it, for some reason they're not showing up. So I use an iPad to edit my videos, and it's just like it just flips out. So it's a little weird, but I don't know. So I was like, okay, it's time. It's time to switch to a new editing software. So I was like, what's out there? So I started looking, and my mom had just gotten like the all apps Adobe plan for her company, and it was like, oh sweet, I can get Adobe Premiere or Adobe Rush. So I was like, should I get Premiere? But like Premiere is like the biggest editors use Premiere, and I was like, I don't think I'm ready for that yet. And so I was like, oh, I don't know. So I went with Adobe Rush. And it's kind of the Premiere Light, if you will. So that's been pretty cool. So do you ever edit videos, Josiah?
I do. In fact, I am in a competition right now with one of my friends from school. We made it to National History Day state with a documentary. And so if we place second in state out of like 8 people or something, then we make it to nationals. And we get to take a trip to Washington, D.C. if coronavirus lets us.
Wow, that's really cool. So like what did you do your documentary on?
We did it on a Civil War battle called Antietam.
All right,
And
give me like a in Teton 101.
uh battle, Civil War, bloodiest day in American history. A bunch of people died, and the Emancipation Proclamation was issued after it.
Oh, well, that's a 101 for you. So, yeah, that's pretty cool. So, I'm trying to do this new look in my videos. You may recognize it from another YouTuber called MKBHD. If you haven't seen some of his videos, he's a very tech reviewer, but he is trying to be as high of quality as possible, and he uses like $50,000 cameras. It's insane. But so I was trying to think about, okay, what should I do? So he has these looks, okay, and I've actually been trying to replicate some of them. So they're called top downs and first persons, and these all fall under what's called B-roll. So A-roll is like when you're looking at a person. So like it's just talking to the camera,
hmm
And then B-roll is like when you're like engaging a cut to something. So either it's like I'm holding whatever technology I have, or and first persons is that hold whatever technology I have when it's like it looks like I'm pulling it out of my pocket. You're seeing it through my eyes.
hmm
The top downs are more of you're looking at it on a surface. I can be holding it or messing with it or whatever, but it's more like it's on like a marble or it's on a polished concrete surface.
Yeah.
And so I've been trying to replicate these looks with some technology, and I'm not going to get into 100%, but we have a new video coming out in about a week, and it's going to be pretty cool. So you should definitely check that out if it's up. I'll link it at the end of this video when it comes out. So yeah,
Cool.
sweet. All right. I guess that's the
And
end of this
good.
episode. So I don't know when the next one's coming out, but hope you enjoyed yourself. Hope that was fun. Did you have fun, Josiah?
I had great fun.
All right. So I guess I'll see you in the next one. Bye.
All right.